rise that's connected with fixing this building up. The other really important thing from a point of view of construction is it's ready to go. It's ready to be fixed up as soon as we make a decision. So we've invested as council a lot of time and money and work in getting to this point ready to do it. And I know that citizens in Whangarei think we've taken a long time, and we have, but we are ready to go now if we make a decision today to proceed. So my recommendation is that we proceed with the recommendations as they are written.
Councillor Peters. Councillor Reid, you had an alternative motion. Do you want to have that one now, or do you want to do it later on?
No, I'll strike while the iron's hot. Thank you, Your Worship. My motion is that the council investigate selling the old municipal building to a private developer, subject to their giving a satisfactory undertaking to meet council's future aspirations for the building.
Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Golightly seconding that. Councillor Reid, will you speak to that?
Yes, I would, Your Worship. Thank you. It is an iconic building. It is an eyesore. It is deteriorating, and I was through there yesterday, courtesy of ARCO and their staff. I think we're in a phase where we're trying to allocate money sensibly and do the right things and save costs. And if we follow the path of this, we are doing exactly the opposite. We are sending the wrong message to our ratepayers. There is no financial gain to council or ratepayers. There's an aesthetic value, and it, to me, is a want to have, not a need to have. I've done a little bit of investigative work, and if we were to rent that floor space for $186,000 per annum, it's going to take 40 years to recoup the 7.4 million. Now, business sense tells me that's probably not a great way to go, and it would be destined, I feel, for charitable organisations to be on the back of, which will bring even less revenue back to the council. My thinking is perhaps a private developer may retain the front, the facade, and do a development in the rear of the building. And that is something I think we need to at least investigate. We can put a time on it, but it is a way of council keeping heritage, or the front of the heritage, and still advancing the town. And that's where I'm coming from, is cost effectiveness while retaining some part of that iconic building. And that's where I'm at. So with that, it's open to the floor.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Golightly would like to speak to this.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to sort of second Simon there. I mean, you know, we've sort of said that, and everything's for Councillor Reid. I mean, that's right. And although we love this municipal building, it is a beautiful building. There are town hall places like that all around the country that have been turned into hotels, boutique hotels. We're crying out for hotels here. That is a perfect opportunity to sell that to a developer, turn it into a hotel, right in the middle of town. I just think that for me, that's where I'd like to see that building go. Thank you.
Councillor Peters, you'd like to?
I can speak to this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I hear the proposal that Councillor Reid's put forward. I actually rang various people last night to see if there was interest in purchasing the old town hall. I didn't manage to find any, and what I'm afraid of is that this will be another thing like the flats on Deep Street, where we've had them sitting there with people people not being used, not being progressed. We're investigating. They've been sitting here, the town hall, old town hall, has been sitting, looking like it does ever since I've been a councillor. And that deferment of, maybe we can do this, or maybe someone will come forward, is another way of leaving that eyesore there for another 3 years. And that my heart is sad about that. So again, I note the amount of effort that our council workers have put in to getting this to this stage. Yeah, and I will not support the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Benny.
Just a couple of questions. So, on Councillor Reid's amendment, and a question to staff. So, I assume that if this was to be successful, things like the scaffolding and all that would all stay out through this period. So that's a nod, so yes. And what's the cost of the scaffolding and the station? What the other cost for that?
Through the chair, I think I worked out this morning, it's about $7,900 per month it's costing us for scaffolding, and another around about $600 per month for the fencing around the building, which would have to remain until the summer.
Right. And the second question, and I think we all know the answer to this, for instance, if this was to go through, and over a 6-month period we had no buyers, the cost increase would be, there would be a cost increase if we were to go back to plan A.
Through the chair, I would suspect so it would be item to discussion, negotiation with ARCO and engineers.
And thirdly, has this proposition been put to ARCO, and what are their feelings on that? For instance, if we went to market 6 months' time, we had no, is it carry-on business as usual back to plan A, or would we start again?
Through the chair, I can't answer that because this is the first time that as an option.
Thank you.
Councillor Olsen.
Thank you, Chair, Mr. Chair. If we remove the emotional side of this building and look at it as a business, I'd like to know the cost to date that this project has cost the council, and then if we were to agree to Councillor Reid's proposal, would it be possible to, well, depending on what the cost to date is, whether we could recuperate that through, like the sale price? I've read this, and I have quite a few concerns about budget blowout. There's a lot of unknowns in this. The labour shortages. There is expected to be a lot of more construction monitoring required, with some design alterations needed as these unforeseen issues arise. There's a lot of unknown in here, and is this budget that we're looking at going to increase because of unknowns? So that's my main concern. I would like to ask that we have a cost to date. Is that possible?
Ladies, is there a chance that we have a cost to date at the present moment?
Through the chair, I did actually have a cost to date.
It's on the agenda. It's page 52.
I do apologise. Thank you.
I've just got one question, if I can ask, is if the building is to go to sale, there will be some costs which will be design and all that, which is being done. Has that been paid for now?
Through the chair, yes. All our payments are up to date.
So there will be nothing owing to take the sale?
Through the chair, no. I only the ongoing, obviously the monthly costs for the scaffolding.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you. Speaking specifically to the amendment and not the original motion, which I will also like the opportunity to speak on if given the opportunity. On the face of it, I think the amendment holds some merit, but in having thought about this in the limited amount of time I've had to consider it, I think there are significant risks. Essentially what we'd be asking for is for a developer to undertake option 2, which is the most costly of the options. My understanding is that a lot of the steel in the proposed design is required in order to brace a very heavy facade, and that would have to be undertaken regardless of whether you demolish the building or not. So what we'd be asking a developer to do is to embark on an incredibly risky proposition. They would be taking on an historic building that is listed and protected. They would have to go through a resource consent process. They would have to strengthen the facade in the interim while the rest of the building is demolished, and then design a building behind the facade that was acceptable to Heritage New Zealand. I can see a lot of risks there, and while on face value it might seem like a reasonable idea, I think that once developers dig into it, they would be taking on a huge degree of risk. And the risk for council in embarking on that path is that developers go through that process, reject the degree of risk, reject the idea to buy the site and develop it privately, and then what we lose in the meantime is the certainty around an option that's ready to go, is costed, there is a contractor on board, it's in for consent. We could lose all of that while exploring something that may not have any potential. So I'm wary of introducing uncertainty and further risk to the council. On the flip side, if we did restore the building, we roughly know what we're in for. There are some risks, as Councillor Olsen pointed out, as there would be with any project like this. It's an old building, there will always be unforeseeable circumstances. My understanding is that there is a reasonable contingency in place in order to account for any of those unforeseeable things coming through. And so paying for variations where they come up, it's normal for a project like this. I would endorse the idea of council taking on the project, undertaking it, completing it, therefore maintaining the heritage value and the significant building for the community, but then look at options to sell the building fully restored to another outfit in order to recoup costs, the additional costs that would be incurred over and above what's being paid for by insurance.
One of the questions I have here about the whole proposal here, I noticed that it was designed at 67% earth-based strengthening. Is there a reason for that, or is that standard practice now? I thought it was in Northern was only requirement to be 33%.
Chair, can I ask the engineer to answer that question?
The minimum is 34, but we have an opportunity right now, and it's the preference of engineers throughout the country that aim for that 67. There has been some changes with the seismic hazard model for the country last year as well. And unfortunately, it looks like earthquakes are going to get bigger, and so they're wanting to lift that as well. So we have an opportunity now with the roof not there to actually do something more than just a cosmetic type thing and to actually achieve the 67. So that's our, it's our preference to be doing that now. It would be a lot more costly to try and do something like that later.
Appreciate it, thank you for your answer. Councillor Benny.
I'll admit this is a really tough one for me. I woke up about 3 o'clock this morning trying to think of what is the right thing to do here. I firstly want to say I appreciate Councillor Reid bringing this to the table because I think it's a discussion that we need to have. And I'm looking forward to hearing some other views. We sit here as a council and we say we're going to start saying no to some projects to save some money. And this is one of the first things that have come along. We haven't said no to anything yet. We've just gone along with price increases and we've just battled on and talked the talk. So now he's asking us to walk the walk. Is this the right project for that? I think, as Councillor Mackenzie has said, there is significant risk with going to the market. Is a developer likely to take on that risk? And what are the repercussions of that in 6 months' time, 12 months' time, if it doesn't sell? The repercussions are there is going to be significant cost increases. It is going to cost us more, and we're going to go through this whole process again. For that reason, I am swaying on the side of the original recommendation. Reluctantly, but I think the risks involved in Councillor Reid's amendment are just too high.
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, for very similar reasons, likewise, I think this is a really tough decision. And with others, I walked through the building yesterday, and I want to just comment on the great work the staff and the team have done so far in getting us to this place. I can see it's been very painstaking and thorough, the process they've gone through. So initially, when I considered this revised proposal from Councillor Reid, I think same as other councillors, I thought, well, this is really an option that we should think about. And I can see there are some merits in this, but for the reasons that have already been put by Councillor Mackenzie and Benny, the risks, I think, are significant to kicking the can down the road. As we've talked about around this chamber before, the cost of doing any of these projects is only going to get more expensive. We might find ourselves in a year's time with no takers, and we've lost the contractors, prices have gone up, it's never going to be as cheap as it is today. From an emotional point of view, I can see that there are very good reasons for retaining one of the few heritage listed buildings we've got in the town. And we are short of heritage buildings, so there's a very good argument for retaining it. Looking at the options on the table, the 3 options of demolition, retain the facade, or restoration. I think retaining the facade, I discount because I think it's a hugely expensive exercise, and I think I would take it off the table. In terms of the other 2 options, the reality is that an estimate of 7.4 million now with blowouts and what the team find when they start to dig around, the chances are we're looking at 10 million when we come down to it. And that's a very significant sum given the state of our infrastructure and so on and so forth. So it's a really difficult one. It's not an easy decision, I think, for us to take. And as Councillor Benny says, we've talked a lot about making a stand, drawing a line, but everything so far we've just lots of talk, but we've agreed to. But having walked through yesterday, I think before I walked through it, I had one opinion. I think I'm now leaning towards the view that we should support the option of the staff on the table, and that actually it is a building worth preserving, and although it's a bitter pill to swallow, it feels like we have a responsibility as council not to be the council that's responsible for losing one of the few heritage buildings we've got left. So at the moment I'm leaning towards supporting the original motion on the table and not the amendment from Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clark, is it your questions?
No, I'll speak to it.
Okay, yep.
On the day of the fire, I was working in Cackler Park. I saw smoke rising up above the buildings, and I ran around to find out what was actually happening. The clock tower and the top of the building was on fire, and a huge amount of people came around to see what was happening. The fire crew pulled up, did as much as they possibly could, and got it relatively under control. This was before I got into council. This is insane. The length of time we've had to deal with this to actually get around to getting this over and done with. And I understand the time that it's taken for the...
Sorry, councillors. Good go.
I understand the time that the insurance companies have had to deal with this and the situations we've had to go through. But I've kept on hearing public say, when's this game done? When is this game finished? When is this happening? Because, as it has been said, it is looking like a black spot on us, on the fact that we haven't been able to do this. I can't take emotion out of this decision because we're human. Emotion comes into every decision, regardless of it. It's our culture, it's who we are, it's how we build our relationships, it's our communities, it's the people that actually inhabit these buildings. The community groups, and not even just community groups, but the groups that were actually in this space are valuable to our district. We have multicultural community, we have volunteering Northland, we have citizens advice bureau, although I know they're in a different space now. But these are places that are invaluable to our home. And as a volunteer myself, doing a lot of rubbish picking up around the area, I know the effort and amount of passion that we have to look after this town that we don't expect to pay for. That some people expect the council to be doing it, but these groups are doing a hell of a lot of work for these people. So when people look at it just saying, oh, they're just community groups, no. There is a cost to this, but it is, once again, it's one of those heritage buildings that, as we've just heard, there are very few around. It's one of those spaces that we would be expected to look after. It's one of those spaces that people would, because it's a community facility, people would support much quicker than, in all due respect, some other business deals that we've supported. It's one of those things that, if we're not looking after these type of spaces, we lose them out completely. Why not just put up grey block walls and no color, and just demolish everything and just have everything square blocks? Because if we don't have a bit of color and vibrancy and a bit of character and historicness and all of what we have here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we lose out on who we are as all these different cultures. I'm very supportive of the original motion that Councillor Peters put forward, and as an option, potentially the selling could be investigated, but I really would like to see that happen. I do not support the amendment. I think it really a lot of black stuff, and the staff have done a heck of a lot of work time. They're ready to go to build things, put in a new lift, put staircase around the back, and actually make it more accessible for people and actually usable, and keeps that heritage value too. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to echo the sentiments before me. It is a tough decision, and like Councillor Benny was saying earlier, we are trying to save money, and like Councillor Reid was saying earlier, we are trying to save money. Personally, I don't hold the same emotional attachments to that building, personally. Investigating to sell it seems like a logical option to me until I hear about the potential risks. Just the ongoing, and I think the Armand courts are pretty a good example of what could potentially happen because of the perceived risk for developers, in terms of whether, this is even going to be a viable option for any developer, considering they have to go back and forth with the heritage place, trying to keep the facade, all of that stuff. I'm not sure that developers will find it a viable option for them. And then, like Councillor Mackenzie was saying, we may end up back here having the same conversation again because we can't find a developer. So at first glance, I thought investigating to sell it is a good option until I start to think about the risk. Because unlike the Armand Courts, this place has pretty substantial ongoing costs just because of the scaffolding and those sort of things. So with that taken into consideration, like over a period of time, whether we may or may not find someone to buy the place, that's an pretty massive ongoing cost that potentially we will have to wear too. And the fact that a lot of it is coming out of is coming from CapEx, and then a majority of the increase coming from insurance. I'm leaning more towards the original motion.
Ms. Hosson, you got a question?
Yes, I do. Is it possible, if we were looking at the sale option, to remove the restriction of keeping the facade? Like if we just put it on the open market for a developer to do as they wish with it?
Councillor Olsen, because the building is listed as a historic building, that is out of our control.
Right, okay. And then my second question is, if we were to go ahead with the refurbishment and upgrades and all of that, could we charge current market rentals instead of people calling names?
That will be a decision for council to make. That will be a future decision that you can come to.
Councillor Mackenzie, you got a question?
Yes. I take it, given it's not on the agenda, there hasn't been an evaluation undertaken for a fully restored building?
Through the chair, no.
A follow-on question, do we have an indication of what that might be? Might be? Anything? No?
Chair, sorry, I don't know much about what to say. I would hope that with what we're doing here.
Appreciate that. Sorry to put you in that situation. Councillor Govich.
In regards to the valuation side of it, it would be based on its use from an economic return. So yes, in terms of the motions, I'm speaking to the amendment. Originally, thank you. I walked through the building yesterday. Thanks to Arco and the team. Originally, I was all in favour of retaining it. We've done the same in town, and I've seen what is proposed, and I've had, as I said, we've had to do that. We're to Wanakopri is and North Lindick, and it's an exceptional cost. We did it on a commercial basis. None of these numbers stack up. Seeing what is in there, I was actually surprised by the lack of culture in the rest of the building that has been, due to the fire. Really, there is only the facade that is worth keeping at all. But even then, after seeing yesterday, I think the whole thing is probably is the only real credible option is to pull it down. I had spoken to a developer; they would, but bring it up to 34%. So there is someone out there that would do that. But again, I think in terms of the damage that has been caused in that the best option is to ultimately pull it down. It is a pity that from a property perspective and a development that that council was involved, a prime spot for a car park or retail, and done nicely in terms of the facade, would add to that area. But in speaking to the amendment, I will be voting for it, that Councillor Reid proposed, because under the present climate, this is unjustifiable in terms of, from my perspective, in terms of the numbers and the return and what we have spent today to in terms of projects.
Councillor Harness, with your hand up.
Kia ora. He me tūtahi, kia mai tumi atu ki a koe Councillor Golahi, ka mihi aroha ki a koe. Just in terms of the original, I guess, both recommendations posed for the matua, I'm thinking about some recent governance training we've just undertaken, and the highest priority on the list was reputational risk. And I guess, that's on the floor for us, is reputational risk if we do nothing, reputational risk if we're going to contribute more to CapEx by restoring and completing the building, or the reputational risk if we put it up for sale and let someone else do it, so to speak. And so that's why I waited a little bit before I decided to have a corridor. I missed the walkthrough yesterday, I due to a tummy, and I think that's quite a crucial point around what you see, what's missing, what's not there. A bit like Councillor Walker, I don't have a personal connection to the building. I'm not sure culturally what was there probably beforehand, but it's been there since 1903. So I think it's got a bit of mana to back itself. And the fire was 2019 and we're 2023. And I kind of feel like if this was maybe 3 years ago, perhaps the option of the demolish or the resale should have been, but we're not, and we've got 3 years worth of mahi undertaken by the staff and senior management. And as Councillor Peters said, they've got us to a point where it's like going from amber to green. And I told with the whakaro, Councillor Reid to put this amendment up, because we are needing those. We need some kind of strong options to take place. Maybe that was something we might have needed 3 years ago. So I'll be supporting the original recommendation on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with almost everybody. I think I said we're in an unenviable situation, and we really are. I also agree with those people who have thanked Councillor Reid for bringing this motion amendment to the table. I really do appreciate the conversation and the thoughts and thought processes that we've had to go through to decide what we think of it. Thank you, Councillor Reid. I acknowledge the input of Councillor Yovich and his commercial background. It carries weight, Councillor Yovich, thank you. For me, when assessing the risk, and it's been talked about, so there's no need to go through it again, I think that rather than ask someone else to take our mess and tidy it up, and run the risk that nobody wants to do that, I suspect that I will be supporting the original amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Collins, you got a question or? Okay, yeah.
At the end of this, whatever happens to the, not this meeting, this building, the community groups that were in this building who have been displaced and are currently in other spaces, what happens with them? Because I'm under the understanding that some of those are actually there until they find out what's happening with this. Is that, will their spaces continue? Because where they are across the here is leaking, is moldy, is not, it's tucked away and it's really hard to access for people.
That's a good question. I'm not sure who can answer this one.
Through the chair.
Yep.
So this paper is about the decision on whether to restore the building or not. A few future use of the building will still need to be determined by council. Once future use is known, then we'll know what measures need to be taken with the tenants, the original tenants as well.
So you may want to speak up.
Oh, sorry. Through the chair, today we're talking about whether to proceed with the restoration of the old municipal building. Council will still need to determine the future use of the building at a later date. Until then, we won't know, we won't have any certainty around where the old municipal building tenants will be housed, what the transition plan will be for that.
Councillor Holson, I saw your hand up there before.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm the last speaker going around the table, so it's quite handy this. So first of all, here we go. Here we have got the original motion coming to us with no funding option. It's not clear where we're getting the money, and it's been stated that it doesn't incur ratepayer money or loans. Well, guess what? It does. Because council only gets its money from loans or rates. If you pass this today, you lose the grant applications. Our hope, a lot of the councils around here were supporting applications to our heritage status building. Those will go if we make the decision, but we're already paying for it. It's in the motion. So that's one of the things that the opponents, the supporters of the original motion should have considered at the time. Second one, it's not our building, it's a community's building. All right? So a little bit of history of that building. Used to be a railway station right at the back. You walk up the railway line, you can still see the original platform. It used to be the town hall at the back, right up to the municipal building. It used to be the old town hall. We had international acts come out, musicians. PJ Proby come out and spit his pants up there. So, you know, so that was a place to go. And yet it got into a state where the local council, Whangarei City Council at the time, the City Council at the time, said that it's not up to standard, we'll demolish it. And it's now been a car park ever since. So the history goes on. If you go and put the cost of what's been talked about in the original motion, that is close to a 7% rate increase for 1 year. 7%. All we hear in the community is the cost of living crisis. Everything's spiraled out of control. Now this is a time where council's got to stand up and walk the talk. You know, all the communities are really, really struggling. And here's, you know, the amendment is about exploring all options. And people say, oh, we've got to wait a couple more months. We've been waiting 4 years. Councillor Peters and I have been trying to get information about that hall repeatedly for 3 years. Couldn't get it. The sad thing about this is our insurance payer was only 2.3 million. 2.65. So no one would rebuild on that sort of payment. I support Councillor Young, what he said. He's our finance chair. We're trying to change things. We've had discussion with our leadership team who are buying into a culture of we're going to drive change and we'll make a difference here. We've taken $50 million out of our long-term plan. So we're signaling to the people that we're going to stand up and deliver for this term of council. The sad thing is the time keeps going on. People say the costs are going to increase. In this case, we can stop that cost increase by making the other decision. Explore the other options. That stops all the cost increases. Because if we get a successful partner coming in and working with us, there's a great site to develop, we get the benefits in the city living even. Imagine that, we actually talked about doing something like that. It's in our plan. So explore all options. But I just want to remind you all, if we pass this original motion today, we lose all that grant money. Why would a granted organisation give you money when you already made a decision on it? The sensible thing is, explore the options. Because when the options come back to us, and it'll come back pretty quick, then we can make the judgment. Thank you.
So just a question which has been raised by Councillor Holst, it's someone who can clarify that from the staff. We have put in an application for funding from, I think it's lotteries, is that correct?
Not due to May. It's not due to May.
Yes, so we've put in 2 applications to the Lottery Grants Board. One under the Environment and Heritage Fund and one under the Community Facilities Fund. Both of those funds are due for a decision on the 31st of May, dependent on our resource consent and building consent being approved by May. So those are still in play, although the timeline's really, really tight on our resource consent and building applications.
So, sorry, just to clarify for that, Councillor Holst has highlighted here that if we would go with the original motion, those grants would disappear?
No, through the chair, no. When we talked to the Lottery Grants Board, we were able to progress the restoration and do building works without the applications becoming retrospective. So they're still in play at the moment, but they are dependent on our resource and building consents being approved by the 5th of May.
And we're on target for that?
At the time of writing, we're on target for that. It's a pretty tight timeframe. We may need to go back to lottery grants and renegotiate.
Just point of order?
Point of order, or what's the point of order, sorry?
We get, because it's not often we get the staff talking after all the councillors have spoken, so. But
I asked a question, Councillor Holst.
So look up the terms of reference at the loan facility. Go on the website and find out. If we made a decision now, who's going to cover the risk there? Everyone's talking about risk. Who's going to carry the risk of a couple $1 million out of the council?
I'm just quite to find out.
It's stated by a staff member that the application will remain live after this decision made. I'm saying it won't. Right? So who's brave enough to say it will around the table?
Right, Councillor Holst, I just need to clarify here. Your point of order was with respect to a statement made by the staff.
Yes.
I asked the question of the staff. They've come back with an answer. We have to go by that answer that we've received from them and by the information that they've received.
Your Worship, I looked at it in terms of reference of granting last night. I went through the process and checked that out.
Yep.
So you can take a risk?
Well, the staff have actually made a very clear indication there, Councillor Holst, that they've actually received confirmation of that, and that the confirmation is valid. Councillor Holmes, did you have a question?
I don't think it's a question or a point of order, so I'm going to try it anyway, and please shut me down if you think I'm wrong. But I also sit on Lotteries Grants Board Distribution Fund, not the Heritage one.
Yep.
But my experience of sitting on there bears out the information given from the staff that this would not preclude us. That's my experience. I've not been to the website as Councillor Holst has, but that's my real life experience of sitting on the distribution committee.
Thank you for that clarification. Again, I will point back to, I specifically just asked the staff there, the staff have come back with us with an exact answer, so that the grants are still valid according to the staff, as they have had confirmation. I presume it's in writing?
Through the chair, yes, it is in writing, and it is one of the first things we asked before we went down the track.
So we are, Councillor Olsen, have you got a question?
I do.
Excellent, okay.
Good. I am confused, right? I seek clarity. So if we do not accept or pass Councillor Reid's motion, or amendment, sorry, then we go back to
the original motion.
The original motions, and then do we get to vote on those 3 options?
Well, the one option has been put up by Councillor Peters, which was to refurbish the place.
Yes.
So that's the only option that's been put up. If there is another amendment from there, since everyone has spoken to the amendment, not the original motion.
Right. Okay.
From what my calculations are, is that correct, Nicolene? Excellent, Nicolene is agreeing with my calculations.
Okay.
Okay, So just to clarify, councillors, we've had a good debate here. We've gone through the positives and negatives about it. I think we've had a very good discussion over this. I will also highlight this is a very emotional discussion, because those councillors who have been on council, who have actually had the questions from our public come to them regularly saying, when is this building going to be sorted out? You know, there's a lot of us who have that frustration. Now, councillors, I actually went to a business group this morning, as I usually do on a Thursday morning, and I threw the question out to them. I said, look, guys, what's your view? And they came back to me and said, get it done. I said, but what about the cost? I said, look, the costs are one thing. The problem is it is a historic building. It is better for us to get it done and get it sorted. So I'm very torn, because emotionally, I love the building. From a practical point of view, I'm looking at the costs and I'm going, The biggest question I have for the staff, is there any other options of finding extra funding?
Through the chair, we've explored the funding avenues that were available to us through the lottery grants.
Is there an opportunity for us to go out to the public and ask for public donations for people who would actually like to contribute to it? Has that option been explored?
Through the chair, I don't think so. No.
Is that something that the staff are interested in pursuing?
But it will be for council to make a decision on that. If the council wishes to do that, then it can do it.
Okay. So, councillors, we will put the amendment to the vote.
Right a reply.
No, you don't get a right to reply in an amendment, sorry. Councillor Reid. So we'll put the vote.
Division, please.
Councillor Holtz has called for a division. All those who would like to proceed with the amendment, now just to clarify, the amendment is, as it's stated here, investigate selling the old municipal building to a private developer subject to their giving a satisfactory undertaking to meet council's future aspirations for the building. That is the amendment put up. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Olsen, Councillor Jovich, Councillor Golightly, Councillor Holz, Councillor Reid.
Those against?
Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Beanie, Councillor Connick, Councillor Peters, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Harding, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Luca, and His Worship.
Okay, the motion is lost. The original motion, now an amendment.
No, the amendment.
The amendment is lost. That is correct, Councillor Holmes. Thank you for correcting me on that. We'll move back to the original motion. Is there any other discussion on the original motion? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship, seeing as how I didn't speak to it before. Heritage buildings. Start at the railway roundabout and walk up Bank Street. What's the first thing you see? The Grand Hotel. Keep walking. There are numerous old buildings in Bank Street. This is but one, but it has been, and pardon the term, it has been bastardised. It is not what you would class now as fully heritage. I would think, when you look at the back area of that building, it has been added to. There have been changes inside. There will be further changes. They may well be accepted by the Heritage Trust, but to me, it will not be that same building. The cost to date, 1.45 million. We've had 2.183 paid out. We could sell that for $1 as it is and walk away with money in our pocket and not have to borrow or use ratepayers' money to spend between $7.4 and $10 million to get back a building that is not going to give us a financial return. A new development could go in there with a look-alike facade, so they can take the whole thing down and replace the structure at the front as a look-alike. It can be done. Now is the time for all of us to actually show some fiscal responsibility for the first time this term. You've got 5 of you leading the charge. I ask the rest to back us. Thank you, sir.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you. Just further to my thoughts on the amendment, just to the original motion. From my perspective, heritage buildings do offer a lot in that they are an expression of a culture at a certain point in time. So if you demolish heritage buildings, you lose that part of a conversation about what we cared about at a certain point in time, and I think that's something that having that depth with old buildings in a city to me is a very valuable thing. I don't personally have a connection to the building, but I understand that a lot of other people do, and I value that connection that they have, the stories and the memories of that place, and then architecturally what it adds to the city as a whole. I just want to speak about the insurance claim, and I know this is going backwards, but there's a lesson to be learned here in that, and I'm fully aware that it was a complex and elongated insurance claim, and they're not easy. I've been through one myself after the earthquakes in Christchurch, a similar scenario. I think one lesson to be learned from this is the potential to not accept a settlement, but to keep the insurer on board throughout the construction phase in order to mitigate risk for the council. I appreciate the insurer would only have strengthened the building to 34%, but there would have been an option to pay for betterment to get it up to 67%, so pay the difference. But what we've ended up with is a very unfortunate scenario where we accepted a settlement, then couldn't undertake the repairs because of COVID, and now the construction prices have gone up. If we had have kept the insurer on board, they would still be subject to those cost inflations. So but we are where we are, there's nothing we can do about that, and so we're presented with $3.4 million that we have to fund. And I'm very uncomfortable about that. I'm sympathetic to those who have suggested the amendment. I am, and I'm torn. I've been thinking long and hard about this and trying to come up with other options, and the only viable other option that I can see, given that what the amendment proposed I don't believe to be viable because there are such risks associated with that, is to fork out the money, take on the immediate risk in the construction of it, and then sell the building afterwards, or at least explore that as an option to recoup some of the costs that we've laid down. So I am reluctantly in support of the original motion.
Thank you. Councillor Olsen, do you have a question, or do you want to?
Yeah, I do. Well, yes, I do have questions. So, the option of demolition really hasn't been discussed. Yeah. So, can I? Pardon my ignorance. Can I move an amendment for demolition and remove option for the keeping of the facade? Because that's the most expensive one. Can we get rid of that and then come down to two options?
So, Councillor Olsen, are you asking for an amendment to be written to say that you would prefer to go with option 1?
Yeah, I'd like to move option 1, please.
Okay, so just to clarify with the executive, when would the motion change on that?
We would have to draft up a new resolution around option 1. There are challenges with that. They're expressed within the agenda item. We would need to try something up on that.
So because Councillor Olsen is asking for this amendment to be done, on the fly, it's pretty hard to try and work out where this is, Councillor Olsen. I can see what you're probably asking for. We'll probably be more identified with A and B. And D.
Okay.
Would that be correct? I'm just double checking here.
I realise that there are problems associated with the heritage status and demolition. I realise that. And also, can I just talk to that? So on page 50...
Just before you do it, Councillor, I want to make sure everything's done right here. Because one of the catches is you've asked for an amendment, so I've got to make sure that the amendment is what you say. Sorry.
The councillor could move the council notes the report to request staff investigate the option 1 demolition.
So can I not just move an amendment for demolition?
Yes, but at the present moment, you've also got to acknowledge the other parts of the report as well, because there's a report here that's been written. So I want to make sure the wording's correct. That's what I'm a bit concerned of, okay? Because we have been caught out in the past by doing motions on the fly, so we need to make sure it's actually correct through the whole process. Yep. So look, what we'll do is I'm not really comfortable doing it, but that's okay. I do understand the reason for this. Let's just adjourn for 5 minutes so that the motion can be, so that Councillor Olsen can actually get the motion sorted. So we'll come back at 10:35. Do we have a second for that? Councillor Mackenzie? So Olsen is proposing is not a direct negative as well, so we're just trying to make sure in that clarification. So we're just waiting a little bit of time from the legal team to give us an answer to come back with us. So we just went, as I said, Councillor Olsen, this is one of the issues of creating something on the fly. We need to make sure it's done correctly. Councillors, I know this is a bit of a learning phase for most of us, but we need to make sure that if we do things, we do the motions correctly so that they can't be challenged later on. And as you can see, yes, I've got one. No, I've lost another one again. Okay, so I'm basically still up here by myself.
You feel there's some shit?
Just tell a few jokes.
Give us a few one-liners.
And we're missing one from the front down here as well. They're still out there in the discussion, are they? Okay. Should we give them another 10 minutes? Another, say to 10:45?
We can do this for the meeting.
Yeah.
You'll bring it to 10:45. Just because I just noticed that we're missing a few key staff up here as well at the same time. So we'll just adjourn for another to 10:45. a amendment for you, Councillor Olsen, which is here. Is you going to read that out for me?
Councillors, I can read the amendment out. The council, one, progresses option 1, demolition of the old municipal building, and reports back to council once HNZPT and resource consents have been obtained, and reports back to council in relation to potential need to consult in accordance with council's significance and engagement policy. 3, that's the report.
Councillor Olsen, are you happy to move that amendment that you've got there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that amendment?
I'll second it for
Sorry, just so Councillor Benny seconds it for discussion.
second discussion.
Yep. Okay, Councillor Olsen, would you like to talk to your motion, please? Your amendment.
Yes, I would. Look, you know, as I've said, I have emotional ties to that building. I've been to so many good balls in that building and all that. But, you know, I think in this, you know, it's about our responsibility to our ratepayers, pulling back, making some hardcore decisions. And to me, the demolition was the cheapest option. And when I read through this report, there's so many uncertainties in it, and I just think that there would be an absolute budget blowout. Like the tile replacement to lighter tiles, there's no price there, you know. So that was part of forming my decision because of the unknowns. And I just feel that this is what I need to do for my ratepayers.
That's big.
Yeah, so I've seconded the motion, and purely for the discussion, because I think this is an option, but I think it's been covered really well by staff in the agenda. And Councillor Olsen is right, there are significant risks which either way we go, but I think the option of demolition raises significant risk for us, and I think the staff have covered it really well. A resource consent will be required, likely for a public notification, as the building is a high profile site. Consenting process is estimated to take a minimum of 9 months. 9 months more of time and money and wasted effort, possibly. We don't know. And then public consultation is the option of that as well. So while I understand, and again I thank Councillor Olsen for bringing this for discussion, I cannot vote for it, and I will have to go back to the original recommendation.
Councillor Peters.
Yes, I agree with Councillor Benny. After that 9 months, we could also be faced with someone saying, no, you can't demolish that. And there we are again. Increased costs, facing the issue again. This is just, it could be just delaying it. I have to say also that this is against that motion, as I've just come back from Honganui. And I have to say, if this was being debated in their council chamber, there would not be any disagreement. They just love their historic buildings, and they've had lots of floods through their areas and so forth. And they've got tons of historical buildings, but they wouldn't go. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councillor Hulse.
Yes, I've got a lot of sympathy for the amendment, mainly because it gives you certainty. What we've got proposed in the original motion is there's so many ups and downs still. There's still no secured costs on a lot of things. It's council's record of doing new projects has shown quite extensive blowouts on all of them. And currently we've got 8 buildings that have been asked to do something with. 8 buildings. Like that is getting beyond a joke. And it's all this sympathy stuff comes out, oh, we've got to preserve this, we've got to preserve that. Just put yourselves in the ratepayer's shoes and come along and say, we can't afford to buy groceries, we can't afford to buy a house, we can't afford to do this. So we're here representing them. We're not here representing the Heritage Building Trust or any of those things. We're representing our ratepayers. The biggest concern we've got, if we go along with the original motion, is the cost plus. I can see the cost plus. Like, I'm a builder by trade. I know how to read plans, I know how to read documents, and there's a huge amount of risks in this building. We've got a huge contingency of there, $700,000. If it is so secure, why is the contingency so high? So we've already padded it out to cover just in case, because there's no certainty. Going back to the demolition, at least you've got certainty. We clear the site, we then sell the site off, or whatever, and we get a return on it. The investment of selling that property will more than cover all the costs of what's being promoted to our internal costs. Going back to the heritage status, what does that actually mean? We had a heritage building down the town basin. It kind of got removed from Huntervasa. Where was the protest from the heritage people? If we want to preserve heritage, where was the protest? Absolutely nothing. So the heritage building is a figment of a lot of people's imagination, because we're still a young country. Heritage buildings, when you go overseas and see something that's 1,000 years old, that's heritage. So the building is poorly designed, everything's poured on site, very, very hard to change. In situ columns and beams, interlocked, so we've got the most cost escalated proposal, and if it goes ahead, like I said before, where are the council's alternative to bring the cost down? We're responsible for the budgets. You know, we haven't even got the final costing of the building next door yet. You know, we've been told it's within budget, or however it is, of the extended budget of $10 million. Extended budget, $10 million to get that fixed. This one's got all the likelihoods of doing the same. And, you know, like the question Councillor Olsen said about the tiles, you know, that should all, we should know all that. Quantity surveyor should know that. You know, like all due respect to the people in the room, those are just A, B, C of building. You get your prices before you make a decision. So just be very, very careful the signal we're sending you. But you know, in my case, it's quite clear the ratepayers come first.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Any other?
Just a correction.
A correction, yes, Councillor Reid.
Second line of number 1.
Yep.
And resource consents should be been obtained.
Councillor Olsen, as the mover, you agree with that correction?
Yes, I do, sorry, I should have.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
That's a second. Thank you for that. Thank you for the correction, Councillor Reid. That's very important to make sure that's correct. Councillor Connell.
Question, please.
Yes.
In regards to the funding that is needed for this, we have some currently under the current annual plan within this agenda that's already currently out. The other part of it is already budgeted within what we have, where we are at. So
I think Councillor Connell's asking a couple of questions there in relation to the funding side of things. Now, just get clarification from the Chief Executive here. They are very good questions. I believe they are covered in the report. Page 52 says the estimated costs for the demolition, $1,453,000. Now, what Councillor Connell is asking for clarification of is, has that been budgeted or not in the annual plan?
That would be taken from funds that were already within the annual plan.
Sorry, what was that?
So yes, they are already within the costs of the annual plan. They've all been signed for
the original, from the original motion.
From the original motion, that's correct.
And so in the original motion, aside from the fact that there's already a portion that's in the annual plan currently, this is an extension more, because it's trying to wrap it around, of only $1.2,500,000 $1.256355 million. $1,256,355. Is that the extension to that that's not currently under, that we're debating here essentially? Well, not.
Jimmy, I think you had an answer for us here.
Yeah, through the chair, so we hopefully get that right. So that is the additional funding that's required for the long-term plan. I think one of the things that we would need to confirm is if we're moving from CapEx funding, which the rebuild is obviously building an asset, toward demolition on its own. Demolition would be an operating cost, so there would be a change there from a financial perspective.
So does that answer your question, Councillor?
For the most part.
And that is a very good point that the staff have just pointed out. Victoria, you got a...
Yeah, through the chair, I'm just anticipating answering the question fully then, that yeah, through the draft annual plan currently, council in that budget had already got 1.9 million of this shortfall for the building in the draft annual plan currently under CapEx, under debt funding. So today it would be seeking the additional 1.2 million to add into the annual plan debt funding to reach the 3.5 million. So just on the table, it demonstrates the amount of funding that's missing from the annual plan draft budget that would make up the shortfall.
And also on top of that, the funding would then fall from CapEx and move into OpEx.
I'm not talking about the demolition, I'm just talking about the structure of the funding, and I think that's what, Councillor Connor's question wasn't about the demolition, I think it was about the makeup of the funding that we're looking at for first, for the original recommendation.
It's likely to also be considered OpEx as opposed to CapEx.
So we
The demolition would. So, sorry, through the chair, I think we were talking about two different things.
I was asking about the original costing for it, not the costing for the demolition.
My apologies, I thought you were referring to the demolition.
Okay. No, but it is good to know that it would be OpEx rather than CapEx.
Yeah. So that is another consideration to pick up Councillor Olsen's motion there, is by switching to demolition, you will be actually directly putting it straight onto the ratepayers.
Saving in the long term.
Councillor, go ahead.
Question.
Yep.
Or possibly a question addressed to Councillor Olsen.
I can't ask a question of a councillor.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Worship. Is this, so we're saying here we're going to progress option 1, demolition of the building. If this goes through, are we just then progressing, looking into the demolition of the building? Are we actually demolishing the building? Just want to be clear what we're voting on. Are we looking into the demolition, or are we actually, that's it, we're going to demolish it?
Okay, so good question, Councillor Golightly. The way the report is written is quite clearly reporting back to, if option 1 is chosen, we are required to go get a resource consent, and we are required to then possibly go out for consultation on that, which I suspect will happen because it is a heritage listed building.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I will do this.
It's not going ahead and doing demolitions. We've got a whole process there which will take months. Is that correct?
You've got a process to go through, and as outlined within the recommendation, Council staff will report back in relation to progress on the consents, and as long as consents can be obtained for that work and it doesn't trigger significance, then we would be going through to demolition of the building. If, however, we don't get consent, when we report back to council may need to make another resolution.
Councillor Golightly explains everything?
Yes, it does. I mean, yeah, I just, that sort of option, and then sort of we go out for consultation, to me makes a lot of sense regarding this decision. So thank you. Yes.
Councillor Locker.
Oh, just a question. So if option one, so if it went through and then everything went to plan in terms of consents and consultation, what were the explored options when that building is gone? Or are there any?
That question would be posed to the council at the time, once the building is demolished. As you can see by the time frame on option, in page 52, it is estimated time frame if demolition does go ahead, it would take 20 months. So by that time it goes to December 2024. So at that point, it would be the discussion from the council as to what would have to happen with the building afterwards.
Thank you.
Or the site afterwards. Any other questions? Any other statements? Right, councillors, we will. It's definitely open for discussion. Waiting for you to.
You just said any more questions?
Oh, sorry.
I'll speak to Your Worship, thank you. If we do have to consult on it at some point, at least we'll hear loud and clear from the ratepayers as to what they want us to spend their money and their debt on. And that is showing fiscal responsibility. I wouldn't be averse to a clear site. It's a prime position, and I think that would be an extremely valuable. I'm just being a little bit money-minded here and taking the emotion out of it, and I think that's where we need to start looking as a council. There's less emotion, more thinking. I would not be averse to the demolition if we can't go in the other path I'd suggested. That site would then be extremely valuable. It is right slap bang in the middle of our CBD and a brilliant site to develop. So I will be voting in favour of the amendment. Thank you.
Am I able to ask another question? Am I, so consultation, so from what I've heard, consultation may or may not be triggered or required. Is that correct, or it's definitely if this goes through we'll have to consult?
Yes.
We need to look at more detail in regards to council significance policy, and if indeed it triggers council significance policy, the council will need to make a decision in regards to consultation. If in fact it doesn't, then we will need to do that. However, there may be a requirement to consult as part of the consent process for the demolition building.
And
so there's two separate things.
No, I just, it's just the prospect that we may not have to consult. That's super worrying for me. Like if this was something that I would even begin to think about, I'd like to know that consultation was a definite part of the process.
Yeah, that's Councillor. The Chief Executive has just highlighted that if you are wanting a consultation, we need to add that into the amendment. At this present moment, we are very much reliant on the resource consent and the requirements of a heritage listed building to whether there would actually be consultation. The next part of the consultation, as was highlighted earlier by the Chief Executive, if it happens, would be if the site or if the was deemed significance.
Yeah, I understand.
Councillor Cooper?
I'd like to move procedural motion.
Councillor Cooper, go for it.
Procedural motion that we put this amendment to the vote.
Okay, procedural motion has been division, and a division has been called. And we need a seconder for the procedural motion. We've got several hands going up. Councillor Mackenzie's got his hand up. Excellent. So the procedural motion will be put. We need to vote on whether Correct. So that's for the procedural motion or for the...
Division of the procedural motion.
Councillor Cooper was.
Sorry, just making sure here. We won't do the motion. Okay, right, so we've had moving second of the procedural motion. You're asking a division on the procedural motion, put the motion. Because there's two motions here.
Oh, sorry, no.
Oh, right. We just had to get clarification on that, right. So, all those in favour of going through the procedural motion? Aye. Any opposed? Carried. Right, now we'll go to the amendments, and you're asking for a division done on that. Right. So division has been called for the amendment, which was as Councillor Olsen, just to make sure we've got this all correct here, that one, Council progresses with option 1, demolition of the old municipal building, and reports back to Council once HNZPT and resource consents have been obtained, and 2, reports back to Council in relation to the potential need to consult in accordance with Council's significant and engagement policy, and 3, notes the report. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Olsen, Councillor Yovich, Councillor Golightly, Councillor Hulse, Councillor Reid.
All those against?
Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Berry, Councillor Connor, Councillor Peters, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Harding, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Ruka.
Okay, I'm supposed to do that too. Sorry, yep. Yeah, I'm against it too, yeah. Yep. Sorry, I was supposed to put my hand up. So the amendment is lost. So we'll go back to the original motion again. Which is... You're not going to get me to repeat that. Okay, so the original motion has been put.
And that is from
Councillor Peters. Do we have any other discussion on that? Councillor Cooper.
Put a procedural motion and bring this torture to an end, your worship.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Do we have a seconder for that? He has not spoken to the original motion, no.
I couldn't hear, I'm afraid.
He's asked for a procedural motion, Councillor Olsen, that the motion be put, and Councillor Holmes is seconding that. All those in favour that the motion be put? No, sorry. All the motion being put?
making sure there's
Any opposed? Right, the motion has been carried, the motion has been put. The motion is as per said before. Because the procedural motion has been said, you do not get a right of reply. Shall I read this out again? Okay. Well, is Councillor Peters going? No, I'll read it out. Okay. Just to make sure clarification, is everyone happy for me not to read it out, or would you like me to read it out?
Yes, please.
I will read it out. Okay. That Council A approves additional budget of $3,254,784, bringing the total project budget to $7,430,961, so that the old municipal building restoration project can progress from the design phase to the construction phase, noting that $1,998,429 of the $3,254,784 is already allocated in the draft annual plan. B, approves the necessary budget adjustments be made to the final 2023-24 annual plan to provide a total budget project of $7,430,961. C, notes total insurance proceeds of $2,365,489 for material damage and business interruption have been received by Council. D, notes the variation from the procurement policy requirement to not openly tender. This is due to a previous decision of Council in a confidential agenda in March 2022. This variation will be signed off by the Chief Executive as required by the procurement policy. E notes that should any application for external funding be approved, the council funded portion will be reduced accordingly. Councillors, you've heard the motion. The motion has been asked to be put. Division has been called by Councillor Reid. All those in favour, please raise your right hand.
Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Benny, Councillor Connor, Councillor Peters, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Harding, Councillor Holmes, His Worship the Mayor.
All those against?
Councillors Olsen, Councillor Jovich, Councillor Golightly, Councillor Hulse, Councillor Reid, Councillor Ruka.
Any abstaining? Totals come to?
Carried.
The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. We will now move on to item 7.5, page 60 or 63 in the digital copy. Councillor Holmes, I understand you wanted to move this. Would you like to read that, please?
I will, with pleasure, Your Worship. Thank you. Recommendation that the Council 1 adopts the Regional Speed Limit Review Whangarei Heads Catchment Recommendations Report. Attachment A. 2. Adopt the Interim Speed Management Plan for Whangarei Heads. Attachment B. 3. Receives the report Regional Speed Reviews Whangarei Heads Catchment Technical Report. Attachment C. 4. Delegates the Chief Executive to make any necessary minor drafting or presentation amendments to the attached recommendation report, attachment A, and interim speed management plan for Whangarei Heads, attachment B, and to approve the final design and layout of the documents prior to final printing and publication.
Do a second for that. Councillor Reid seconding. Councillor Mackenzie almost. Councillor Reid second. Would you like to speak to that?
Just briefly, yeah. So I want to thank the team for a very detailed and thorough review of the speed limit in the catchment area. I'd say that it's possibly the longest report we've had to council in this term, so well done there. We had, it's been back to council a couple of times. It's been very thorough. We had 170 submissions, 8 personal submitters, very thorough and detailed, and I support the recommendation on the table. Thank you.
Okay, that's home. Councillor Gola?
A question.
Yes.
Chris Road, is that the road that where the Pateroa Bay Tavern is? Is that the road sort of directly almost opposite?
Yeah, the staff are nodding away there that yes it is.
It is, okay. I was quite surprised that there was no feedback received because that seemed to be, for me and everything that I had sort of spoken to people about, that was the main issue of sort of, part of the whole Whangarei Heads Road with the, people sort of coming around that corner. So, I just, 80's too, so I'd just like to sort of say that I just feel that 80's still too high, so, but,
Do you want to make any comment on that? Was there a question, or was a question made there, Councillor? There was a question there, wasn't there?
Yeah, and possibly then, maybe, if we could, so the proposed speed limit is now, so hang on, the current speed limit is 70, we've now increased it by 10 kilometres.
Clarification.
I've just noticed that and thought,
What page is that, Councillor Gola?
it's 105 on the paper version.
105 would be 108 on the electronic version.
Chris Road, current speed limit is 70. I wanted it 50, proposed speed limit is 8. So that's as you're coming around the corner, you've got Pateroa Bay Tavern on the right, and you see people all the time running across that road, and every time I go around that corner, I just,
So, what Councillor Golightly, before you speak any further, you're actually asking a question of the staff is the the rationale behind that speed change.
Please.
We have had this come through a previous agenda, so would you like to answer that?
Through the chair, in terms of that area, to answer the first question around feedback, the bulk of the feedback I received was on Whangarei Heads Road at Chris Road intersection and other areas along there. The reason, in my opinion, that we didn't get a lot of feedback of our proposal for that area is that we probably got it right, or exterior routes, particularly Whangarei Heads Road. So we're proposing a much lower speed limit right outside Kevin, noting the large amount of pedestrians that cross there a lot of the time, but the rest of the road around there not too dissimilar to the existing speed limit, or a significant rationalisation of the number of changes. Crisp Road, from memory, and I was scratching to find half the energy side, noting that there are a lot of traffic into this whole catchment. The bulk of it is more rural in nature and sealed, that's why. But I am now wondering whether there's a small portion of it is a low speed limit by the car.
Yeah,
I'll have to come back to you on that, I'm sorry.
I understand. I just realised Chris Road is actually, that speed limit is on Chris Road, whereas I'm kind of thinking about Whangarei Heads Road by that Chris Road.
Thank you, Councillor Golightly. I'm glad you came with that clarification.
That conclusion.
Thank you very much. Okay. Any other councillors? Councillor Golightly, Councillor Connaught, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to first of all thank so many people for actually submitting and engaging in this process. Thank you, staff, for getting through as much of this as possible and also engaging with us with the concerns that we had around some of the locations, and all may not agree on some of the decisions, public or individual. It's a heck of a lot to do, and it's one of those things that we need to be able to do to make it the most efficient as possible. One concern I would just like to raise is, just in particular, I'll note it on here, but page 67 of the agenda, we have Patau North and Patau South. It's Patawa. Now, if you go into what Patau is, the Patau syndrome is a syndrome caused by a chromosome abnormality, which in some of the rare cases the cell in the body contains an extra genetic material from chromosome 13. This is one of the things that if we don't get the name right, it means a completely different thing. Same with if we have macrons over letters or not. So we need to ensure that we're getting these things right, because these are also addresses, and sometimes there's an address that might miss out a letter and then it's all the way down south. I would not like to be called Nicole, and Nicholas, or Nick. There's different ways, but we need to ensure that when we're highlighting these names, that they are the correct terminology, please. And human mistakes happen, but it just needs to be considered.
Thank you, Councillor Connaught, for raising that. I think the staff are nodding away. Yes, they acknowledge that there was a spelling mistake on that, and it should have been Patawa on that page. Because I looked through the rest of the report and there wasn't anywhere else, it was only on that one page. So, well done in that respect. Good spot. Councillor Mackenzie.
I'd like to echo the thoughts of Councillor Holmes. I think this is actually a really important piece of work, and I hope that it will bring about good outcomes in terms of road safety. It's a particularly treacherous area, and those speed limits that have been in date thus far are not fit for purpose. So this review is timely, and I appreciate all the work that staff have put into it. And also taking on board some relevant points made by community groups and individuals who came in here and submitted. I think you've managed to also rationalise some of the tricky little areas, reduce the amount of changes in speed, which was feedback heard from the public. So yeah, I'd like to commend the staff on the work undertaken, and really look forward to the same happening on the Tutukaka coast as soon as physically possible.
Councillor Benny.
Again, I'll echo that. Thank you for this. It's been a long time coming. From our heads have been asking for this for a long time. The issue for me is that this means nothing without enforcement or without some sort of traffic calming like signs and that sort of thing. So while it's a great thing to do, it's still lacking that enforcement side, which there's no criticism of staff, that is the follow-up to that. And I hope that the police and whoever, we can look at how we now, when we change the speed limits, how we enforce it. So I think that's an important part of this, and I look at Vinegar Hill, we've reduced that speed to 60, nobody does 60 along there. Well, one person, that's exactly right. The second part is, and I will echo Councillor Mackenzie, this is, the next bit is long-term coming is the Tutuka Coast Speed Review, and I really look forward to that, pushing on. Let's pass this today so we can get on with the next one. Thank you.
No other Councillor Hunt?
Yeah, I'm going to oppose it because we're going to be consistent. Here, once again, we've got a proposal with no costings. You look at all these roads, you look at Ross Road, right into Taranuri Road. You know, it's way in the middle of nowhere. It's got probably about 5 houses on it, and it's going to have a speed restricted but a sign put up. You know, like no one drives up it. It's just 5 people. Like the cost, you read through there's 70 something signs on a couple of pages here. They're all got to be installed, looked after, care. So we get into this Green Party way of doing everything with no costings. Yeah, everything with no costings. We can't continue to do this, guys. We've got to have the figures costed out. It's not hard to put in a proposal what it's going to cost. It's not hard to do. That'll take a staff member for less than 1 day to figure that out. So here we go again. And it's very, very interesting. Only a week ago, or less than a week ago, Prime Minister Hipkins was talking about these speed limits, and his view is that we should be reducing them. Coming from the top now. So, very, very interesting conversation. Yet that's not in our report. Thank you.
Right, councillors, no other discussion over that. Did you want to have a right of reply?
Just briefly. To pick up Councillor Benny's comments about needs policing, yes, it does. There are certain elements of calming measures in the proposal as well. So it's not just stick a sign up at the best. So there's some of that happening as well. I think it was a great example of consultation done well, and I think we can probably learn from that process and some of the other consultations that we are currently running, which I've got to say leave me slightly concerned that we're not consulting as well as we should. But I think this was a great piece of consultation. Inevitably, it's compromise. You're never going to please all the folk all the time, and I accept that that's the way it's going to be. But I think overall it was a sterling piece of work. We listened to the input from residents, we responded to that, and I think we should pass this today and just get on with the next one. Thank you.
The right of reply has been had, councillors. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I oppose that. We could,
Councillor Hulse wishes his vote recorded against, and Councillor Jovic, you as well. Councillor Jovic asks his vote to be recorded against. Carried. Councillors will now move on to item 7.6, which is the temporary road closure application for International Rally of Whangarei update. Now that's on page 304 or 307 in the electronic copy. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Reid will move that. Councillor Peters is seconding. Councillor Reid, would you like to read that, please? Page 304.
That'll be the one with the little orange tag. Right, as if we haven't had enough talk on this one. Recommendations that the Whangarei District Council 1. Approves the temporary closure of the following roads to ordinary traffic for the International Rally of Whangarei on the following dates in accordance with section 3421B and schedule 10 clause 11 of the Local Government Act 1974. On Saturday, May the 13th, 2023, special stages 4 and 8 Marlow Road from 926 Marlow to Rupanui Road intersection. Rupanui Road from Marlow Road intersection to Otaikarangi Road. Otaikarangi Road from Rupanui intersection to Swamp Road including Rollins Road. Period of closure 9:15 to 1:30 and 2:30 to 6:15. Please note the start of this stage begins on a section of road within the Far North District boundary. Saturday the 13th of May 2023. Hikurangi Refuel and Community Event. George Street. From Alfred Street to We should have the councillors from each ward. Never mind. George Street, from Alfred Street to Hill Street. Alfred and Hill Streets remain open. King Street, from George Street to Church Street. Period of closure, 8 a.m. to 11:30 and 1 p.m. to 4:30. Sunday, 14th of May 2023. Special stages 14 and 18 Waipu Caves. Waipu Caves Road from 878 Waipu Caves Road to Maupai Caves Road. Maupai Caves Road from Waipu Caves Road to Graham Road. Graham Road from Maupai Caves Road to Ruarangi Road. Ruarangi Road from Graham Road to Maupai Road. Period of closure, 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Approves, number 2, approves, thank God this one's short, approves the temporary closure of the side roads off the roads to be closed for up to 100 metres from the intersection for safety purposes. 3, delegates to the Chair of the Infrastructure Committee and General Manager Infrastructure the power to give public notices of these temporary road closures.
Well done, Councillor Reid.
End.
And I noticed that you are allowing yourself to approve this as the Chair of Infrastructure. And we have a seconder of Councillor Alston seconding it. Councillor Peters seconded, sorry. Is there any discussion to this?
Please.
Did you want to talk to Councillor Reid before I...
Oh no, just I'm quite happy with it. It brings an awful lot of money to our town and our district, and it is probably the most talked about event outside of the Whangarei City Centre.
Councillor Connor.
Thank you. Yeah, would have been good had it all been done at the same time and fixed up, but this is how it goes.
Is that a test?
Councillor Reid.
No, that's
not. Oh. It's a car alarm. Councillor.
So one concern I have, and it's not really in regards to this, but I was speaking to somebody last night who will be volunteering for one of these kind of positions. It's actually noted in here. The first question is, within the agenda it says the community groups that we are calling, is that we as the council are calling to assist?
No, that is the organisers calling to assist.
So that's the rally?
Yes.
So the statement here says the community groups that are calling this, that is from, because to me it's a statement written from accounts, the staff.
Where are you referring to, Councillor?
In the background, first page.
Yeah.
It's underneath there's the rally, community groups who are calling assist now. Is that? I generally read those as that's a staff talking to us, so that's where my question is coming in. Now, the main reason I'm asking this is because last night when I was speaking to somebody who's going to be volunteering in one of these positions, is that they were asking me, and I had no idea, when their training would be to be that person on the side of the road to do it, because they've been, in the previous times, they've had people come up to say, we're trying to check off you've had your traffic management, whatever it is, to make sure it's all good. If they hadn't done it, they don't know anything about it. And unless these people are actually doing that, either we're not telling the rally to do it properly and they're not following, or we're not getting it to the letter where we actually need it to be done. So that's something, it's not necessarily within this, but it needs to be addressed considering this is a road closure and the volunteers are going to be there.
So when the volunteers are involved, and I can actually answer this one, there is a organisation group which is involved, which includes the Rally of International Rally of New Zealand, plus there is also council staff involved, as in from the council side of that. They involve and bring the groups out. They're actually having a meeting tonight to actually go about all their training. So that's where they'll be starting from that and then going to training from all there. So this is all part of the process. This particular agenda item is referring to the road closures. Yes. And I do acknowledge that, yes, sometimes the wording in here is written, but this is a joint venture with Rally New Zealand and, International Rally New Zealand and also the council to make this event.
I don't have an issue with it, but as this relates to road closures and people standing on the side for those road closures, it was just a concern that I wanted to raise to ensure that it gets followed. Because
your concern has been noted and they will follow up on board. No other discussion at all? No? Okay, councillors, you want to reply, Councillor Reid?
I'm worn out.
He's worn out, right, excellent. Okay, councillors, the motion has been moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Now we're going to move on to item 7.7. Now I do need to read out this. This is a supplementary agenda. Subsequent to the agenda being circulated, item 7.7, local government New Zealand remits, was distributed separately, but not within the time frame specified in Lagoima. The report was not included in the agenda for the reasons that the proposed remit were received after the agenda closing date. Council are asked to consider the matter at today's meeting in order to meet the LGNZ deadline. I will move that. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Olsen seconds that. She's quick. Councillor Peters. Councillor Olsen seconded that one, almost. All in favour? Aye. Any opposed? Carried. Right, so we'll move on to supplementary agenda, which is item 7.7. Here. And I will move that as well, if that's okay, that Council 1 supports the following remits to be presented to the Local Government New Zealand Zone 1 meeting for consideration. And that is A, ensure local government elections are fully accessible to disabled people who decide to stand as a candidate. And B, enable councils to determine penalties for parking infringements. Currently these are set by legislation. And 2, delegates to the Chief Executive the preparation of the remit application form for presentation to Zone 1 meeting. Councillors, this is the reason I'm moving this one. It has been seconded, Councillor Olsen seconded. The reason I'm moving this is we have had, as you can read by the items there, we have had a submission from the disability community asking for these things. But one which has been made very, very real to us is one about parking infringements. We technically have no authority to charge people more, even though the disability community is actually calling out for us to saying for those people who are parking in disabled car parks, don't get penalised enough. So this is a well-written remit in relation to dealing with a central government policy that could possibly be changed to help out local government. So which is ideally what Local Government New Zealand is all about, and they would then take that, if this is approved by Zone 1, they would then take that to the Local Government Conference, and then that would then be taken to central government and proceeded from that point if it was approved at the conference. So this isn't merely a procedural motion, but this is a request that has come from our disability community because of something that they personally have been dealing with and trying to get around and would like changes done. And we're just doing that from their behalf. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to extend that remit to include all restricted parking zones, i.e. loading zones, etc., etc. We so often see private vehicles parked in loading zones, and as a result, there's a danger to pedestrians and motorists alike when service vehicles arrive to deliver and they are unable to enter the loading zone because some twat is too lazy to walk 30 metres down the road. So I think we should just take that and encompass a little more and enforce. I'd like to add a few bits in there. We won't go.
Evelyn, just for clarification on what Councillor Reid is asking, the remit refers to the disability sector, refers to the parking for loading zones. Are they administrated by council or are they administrated by central government as well?
So through the chair, my limited understanding of this area is not my specialist area, is with the parking infringements, they are set under legislation. This remit is in front of you today with the intent of looking specifically at the disability parking and also at towing charges. That council is allowed to charge. There is no, the high level remit is to look at the determination of parking infringements and allow those to happen at council level, which would then cover everything. And it's just whether as council you want to focus on a couple of areas or actually just make it broader. And that may be the discussion when it goes to zone 1 anyway.
So point has been noted, Councillor Reid. I think we'll take it.
So the might as well chuck in if they're unregistered and unwarranted, they get towed automatically.
Councillor Peters.
I suggest that perhaps if there are some further remits that Councillor Reid wants, that they go separately. My reason for saying so is the need not to dilute this remit that has been carefully prepared by the disability sector and is really important to them. So if there are further areas, I respectfully suggest that they are presented separately.
Okay, appreciate that, Councillor Peters. I think that's a very good point. Emily, yes?
Just through the chair, just to clarify, the Disability Advisory Group have put forward the local government election accessibility remit. That is the one that has come from the Disability Advisory Group of Council in a formal sense, and that's attached to this agenda. The parking infringements is one that has come internally within Council, but we know that the disability parking is a particular concern, and we know that towing is a particular concern. So they are two separate remits, they're not tied together, they're two different things.
Councillor.
Just wanted to on speak to it, and just on saying that the Disability Advisory Group has whilst they haven't put this agreement forward, they have expressed, they've said we want to put like $1,000 on it to do it. So whilst it definitely has been expressed by that group and others as well. So yes.
Councillor Olsen.
Yes, as you know that I'm on the Northland Disability and Positive Ageing, this remit has come from those meetings. As far as the infringement, that's great because personally I suffer from that all the time. But my main concern is at the last meeting I went to for both Positive Ageing and Northern Disability was around funding. So I would like, if it's possible, to put funding in that first, because as we know, as a disabled person, if you need to put up, if you're running for local government, you've got to put up your signs, there's extra cost involved with getting people to do that. If you want to travel to some of these meetings and that, there's extra cost involved. So it was specifically mentioned at the meeting for funding to enable disabled people to go or to run firstly and to attend meetings. So if that's possible.
I take note of what you're saying there, Councillor Olsen. The wording that is written here is fully accessible. So that could be taken as funding, that could be taken as actually accessible to the building. So I do take your point. We'll take those comments to zone as well. Okay.
Sorry.
Councillor Cooper, did I see your hand up?
I think I've seen recently there is specific funding that we've come up on our emails for disabled people.
Correct.
So I think the funding is increased.
Well, can I reply to that?
No. So we need to keep doing this going. So that is the remit. Any other discussion on that? Right. I'm not going to have a right or reply. It is what it is. It's said right there. All in favour? Aye. Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. We will now move into confidentiality. Sorry, oh, sorry, 8.1. Thank you very much for reminding there. 8.1, which is back on the original agenda again.
360. What pages?
Thank you very much. 360. That's correct. And it's get it right here. Yep, so 360 or 363 of the electronic version. Do I have a mover for this?
Yes.
Councillor Holmes will move, Councillor Benny will second. Councillor Holmes, you want to comment to this?
I will read it out.
Thank
So
you.
the recommendation is that council receive the election services report to the 2022 local government triennial elections.
Excellent. Do you want to speak to that?
No, I think it is what it is. Thank you.
Councillor Benny.
A couple of questions. Page 369.
Yes.
Under election costs. Council, it says about the 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraph down. Council is able to recover 112,795 plus GST from the Northern Regional Council. Have we claimed that?
Through the chair, yes.
Cool, good. I just want to make sure that able to. The second question was, the only thing missing for me is the expenses. Any reason why that's not on it? I think that's always an interesting one.
All on the website, Councillor.
I know they're on the website, but so is a lot of this, but it's coming to us anyway as a report. And I just
Through the chair, the report comes from our election services team, so I can't comment as to why they weren't included
Yeah.
there. I would assume it is because there's so much information for all the candidates in terms of the expenses, and they are accessible on the website.
yeah, but I'm just perhaps asking if we get feedback then for the next one.
Yeah.
If any of us are still alive at that time.
Councillor Harding.
Thank you. Well, the one's on page 372, electoral system review, so it's got notes, it's got dates there around the local authority may change the electoral system use. They must do so by resolution by the 12th of September 2023. Are we in line? What are we doing in there?
Through the chair, we have it noted, we're bringing it as a paper to council in July.
July.
To consider the voting options, which is in line with our usual election preparation of this first part.
Thank you very much.
No discussion. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour?
I'd like a right reply.
Oh, sorry, right reply. Sorry, my apologies.
No, you're welcome. I'd like the right reply. Just like to note that I'm not first in many things, but Whangarei Heads had the highest turnout in the whole Northland at 55.9%. So I'd just like to put the challenge out there to the rest of the councillors to step up to the plate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes, for that right reply. All those in favour, please. Aye. Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, councillors. We will now move on to the confidential.
You just had to get that in.